is this? Apparently this is a 3-meter high statue called AGAPE, the Greek word for the highest form of love. And it depicts a naked man with breasts who is breastfeeding a child. And this is in Denmark outside a museum that was formerly known as a women's museum that dealt with women's history and the triumphs and stuff of women, which has recently changed in the last couple of years to be known as the Gender Museum. Yeah. So this has left some people divided. Anyone that's seen it, I imagine, but apparently in Denmark, the Danes are in a back and forth over whether or not this is appropriate, whether this is art or just craziness. I'm kind of like, well, look, 10 years ago if I saw this, I'd be like, okay, that's quite interesting. What is the artist trying to say here? Are they trying to say that a man and woman, like the parents love this child and whatever, or a man will step up and do any role he can to help the child? Whereas now when you look at it, it sort of symbolizes, because of the climate of the world at the moment, that it's about transgender people. And that immediately seems to get everybody's back up. And why? Well, look at yourselves. Again, I've said this before in previous videos, there is a small group of people where this is their life, and I really hope the best for them. But there is also a huge amount of social contagion and kids on TikTok and people that are making money from gender affirming, I don't know why it's called gender affirming because it's the complete opposite, making money from them and exploiting the people that have a mental illness that believe that this is their lifestyle. Now it just taints everything. So you can't look at this. So this might be a really nice expression of a man and woman, like a combined family unit, which, by the way, I have looked into the artist's explanation of what this is, and it is very similar, and I'll get to that. But at the moment, when this gets slapped in your face, like the dick that's hanging down there, you're like, ugh, I don't like this. Straight off the bat, I don't like this. Because your brain is probably doing the thing where it's replaying a bunch of stuff you've seen on YouTube or TV of these idiots protesting and acting the total fool. And you're resentful of anything that has to do with this ideology now because there are certain people in that community that have made it that way, that have made you instantly think, oh, you know what, this is not for me, I don't like this whole thing because of their attitudes. That's one side. And then you've got maybe another contingent of people that do think the whole trans or even gay movements and stuff like that are against nature, all that kind of stuff. So instantly this kind of thing, this kind of imagery makes people pretty freaking angry right now. And I don't really think this had anything to do with that kind of concept. It just happened to come around at a time when this is the talk of the town. I mean, look, hell, even I'm talking about it and I don't really care about it. And then it was plonked inside the grounds of a gender museum. Recently changed from a women's museum that was about history of women. So, I mean, I guess people are probably still a bit up in arms about that too. The fact that it seems to be erasing women. This kind of thing though, can you imagine, you know, like, I don't know, 3,000 years from now or whatever, and there's a civilization built on top and everything, and they dig down and they find this thing, they're gonna be like, this was the era of the woke dynasty. It's so embarrassing. You're gonna pull down a statue? I'm just kidding, don't touch it, it's fine, it's a piece of art. So let's look at what the artist actually says they were trying to achieve with this piece. Now, I am not from Denmark and I am going to butcher this, but to me, as a person that's been taught to read and write English, this artist's name is Aski Jonathan Kreogard, and he was asked, what is this about? He says this is agape, this is the highest form of love that's bigger than eros, which is, you know, romantic sexual love, and then brotherly love and blah, blah, blah. This was the highest order, and he said he made it from scans of his own body. I can see your dick! And his wife's. He said, quote, the goal of the statue is to question what the man should and be able to do. And then it goes on to say, I'm glad it's starting to talk about these things. I don't know what it refers to, but okay. I think it's exciting to see what it creates of emotions, and we don't necessarily have to agree. Yeah, we know we don't have to agree, but you freaking better, otherwise you get silence on these things. It's okay for you to think it's inappropriate. It's okay for you to interpret it in a way that you don't specifically like. This is art, I get it. One of the things I've always enjoyed about writing / English literature, art, is that it's interpreted in the way that you see it, and so it makes it right and it makes it wrong in a bunch of different ways, and you can explain how it makes it in either of those ways, and I always found there to be a beauty in that. and I really appreciate that. So whatever anyone thinks of this sculpture, I still think it's quite cool because it's controversial. I've also just seen a Dane's opinion on this being sort of a representation of the big P, because their explanation is that when a mother breastfeeds the child, it's to make sure the child is eating and healthy and basically growing up. Whereas if a man was to do it, it's purely self-satisfactory and has nothing to do with benefiting the child, because obviously a baby can't get milk from a man. This person's interpretation of this statue seems to be thinking that it's a celebratory notion of ped stuff. So I'm starting to see more and more now why people are so angry about it, because there is a genuine feeling of apprehension that because we are so accepting of different types of sexualities, that eventually who knows what's going to happen and be acceptable. Because at the moment, you're begrudged for even having an opinion that you've formed yourself based on your own experience and your own intelligence and your own knowledge on different subjects. And you are ostracized now for even asking questions. So I can get why they think that we might be headed to something like that, and something so terrible that because we've been beaten down and not able to ask questions leading up to it, that we'll be forced to accept it. I hope that never happens, but I think I'm going to invest in a wood chipper. And I do feel sorry for the artists that their work might be interpreted in that way, because I hope, and I'm pretty sure they didn't mean it to come across like that. It is probably going to be a point of discussion as well, particularly to slam it down in front of a gender museum that was recently a women's history museum. According to the Gender Museum Inspector, Julie Rothgar-Birch, she said the expectations for the male role are in many ways narrower than the expectation of the female role, and the statue has helped to create some significant debates about the inherited culture notions of the male gender that are still stuck. Lady, I think you mean biology, because men can't breastfeed. And you can be a trans man, so a woman going to a male, and I will 100% support you. You do you, okay? Do it well. Do it proudly, do it well. But if you're going to keep the biological parts that allow you to breastfeed, it doesn't really make people accept it. So they kind of say, well, why should I accept you as a man when you didn't accept you as a man because you kept the woman parts? So I think that's probably where they're going to come up against people that don't really see it from that point of view. And I know that a lot of Scandinavian countries and a lot of European countries are quite progressive, and I don't know how traditional Denmark is, but that's probably where you're going to get a lot of the negative emotion towards this sculpture. And there is a well-known art critic over there called Matthias Krieger, and apparently what they were saying is, quote, people who define themselves as men think the sculpture is banal in relation to the care that men actually provide today. People who define themselves as women thinks it steals from the woman's domain by letting a male body breastfeed. Someone thinks it is an exponent of the agenda aimed at the degradation of binary sex, and that it is therefore wrong and a provocation. He also said that it doesn't add anything groundbreaking to gender roles. So he was basically saying, look, it's a piece of art. Okay, art is cool, I can accept it, but if you're trying to make some sort of woke point, it's kind of lame and we're over it. So what do you think about Titty Man? I mean, Agape. What do you think about this sculpture? It has been around for a couple of years now. It's making the rounds again in the news. But if this is the first time you've ever seen it, I'd kind of want to know what you think, because it is interesting. Again, on one hand, I can say, oh, okay, it's art. I think it's very interesting. I can interpret it in several different ways in my own experience and my own experience with art and the climate that we live in. And then there's a whole other pile of people that might interpret it in different ways. So let me know what you think. Don't want to be one of those people that's asking you to sub and like, but if you feel like commenting or liking, that would help me out. It'll give me the power to do more of these episodes.